All right, thank you for choosing Minority Alliance organization today. Today we'll be speaking on the housing policy within America for minority uh, Americans, specifically geared towards African Americans, and being able to find decent housing and being able to have a better opportunity when they do go search for housing. Um, One of the main things that we feel that can be attacked policy wise is uh, changing the maybe requirements uh, when it does come to credit wise and things of that nature, because we see within the minority community that there's years and generations of uh, kind of a credit cycle that's kind of caused people to be stuck where it's almost impossible unless you work on your credit for about 5 to 10 years to even have an opportunity to go own your own home, and that's something we gotta figure out a way to affect at the policy level. Um, Mark, I know we were speaking before. When it does come to the credit side of things, what can we do as far as policy or once Senate gets done? Because I know they've been focused on the impeachment process, and now they're focused on the COVID relief. But following this, we need to start looking at policies and laws that can be passed that are geared more towards the minority community to bring us out of the inequality that we're facing now, especially within the housing.
Yeah, so you know, I took a little time to look this up and look up some research about this, and I think policy-wise, the the first thing that's going to need to be done is an establishment of what it is that has made this system implicitly biased for so long against minority communities and the minorities who have applied for these loans over the years. You know, they need to take a look at the data, because when you take a look at some of the data that has come along, there have been a lot of studies that have happened about the different rates and the different ways that people treat you. You and I spoke of a case where you had an African American couple that had their home appraised. They were actually already homeowners. They had their home appraised, and it came back with a certain number. And then, just out of a sheer experiment, they had a Caucasian friend pose as the wife in that same situation. They had the very same house appraised by the very same company, and that house was appraised at almost 50% more value. That is not an isolated incident. And in fact, there are so many other places who have done, the University of Berkeley has done major studies between 2008 and 2015 on over 7 million loans. And not only do African Americans have a harder time getting a loan, and African Americans and Latinos have a harder time getting a loan, but they also pay higher rates to the tune of, over $700 million a year in higher rates. So, there's an implicit bias when it comes to the credit system, be it your history, be it, an absence of credit. A lot of problems you see in African American Latino communities, especially, is an absence of credit, which in our current system is worse than bad credit. Having not gotten a credit card, having not gotten these things that are reporting constantly into your credit. Another problem is credit literacy. No one is teaching at on the on the children's level and on a preteen and teenage level, high school years. They're not teaching you how this system works. And then you come out of high school, you come into adulthood, and whether you go to college or not, you come out with anecdotal data at best on how to deal with our credit system. You may have a family member, you may have to learn it from a family member. You may have to have the wherewithal to look it up yourself, but there is no system in place that is giving you that kind of knowledge. So you're walking into a system that's already set up against you. You're walking into it blind, and you're walking into it without a financial upbringing and background that allows you to be able to take advantage of any of the loopholes in that system. So all those things need to be looked at and explored to be able to put together a policy. Because there's one thing for them to say that we want to take a look at the racial, discrimination that is occurring in housing. That sounds really good, but there's a meat and potatoes to, coming up with that kind of policy, and it's going to take everything from understanding and knowing what the data is, being able to disseminate it in a way that people understand, being able to look at from childhood through adulthood what it takes and how this thing is built. There needs to be more accountability on those who set up our credit system and those who set up how loans are done, and why it's set up that way, because it is set up in a way where just based on socioeconomics, where you live, where you're born, could have a major impact on whether you're going to be a homeowner one day, and depending on who's in your family and who you can get that kind of information from. So to build policy to actually help this, I hope that they are able to give it the type of attention that it deserves, because you're going to need the type of research, the type of data, the type of understanding of how the rules go, how the laws go, what can be changed to make it better, what can be changed to reward those who've been able to just having a stable employment. This doesn't seem to be an issue when it comes to automobile ownership or any other thing that requires loans, whether it be anything in our system, whether it be televisions, furniture, or anything like that. But when it comes to home ownership, which is the gateway to generational wealth, there seems to be that kind of glass ceiling there. So I think the first step for government is recognizing that the glass ceiling is there, and then doing their research to find out how thick that ceiling is. What does it take to crack it? What's it made of? Who put it there? And how do we make sure it doesn't go back on and somebody doesn't just build another ceiling a little bit above it?
Yes, sir. Now, as I said, a little bit earlier, I think that housing is the most essential, I think, piece to us actually reaching equality across the board. I think that's why this needs to be one of the most vital things that they need to be addressing within Congress, following COVID, getting this COVID bill done, and, maybe getting back aligned and seeing what things we need to attack as Americans uh, in total. But we definitely need to look within minority communities now that Biden has, he's kind of got together the committee to look into minority inequality. This needs to be one of the main issues that they're attacking head first, because when we're talking about the generations that are coming behind us, um, we want to be able to give them a better opportunity and be able to raise them in a better environment that gives them, a better shot in the long run at life. Period. So, as I said, this is one of the most vital and key issues when we are speaking on, as you said, with credit worthiness. And I believe you said there was a study, that was done deeper into AI study that saw the inequality in minorities being able to get mortgages, being able to go out and get um, different loans from certain banks and through realtor companies and things of that nature. Um, my biggest thing is what what type of idea of policy would best suit in this situation to offer more of a percentage of minorities a shot at true home ownership uh, on that end.
Well, I think we can probably start with taking the human factor out of it and doing some research to find out why there's such a discrepancy between what we're seeing in home loans when it comes from the human factor, face to face loan applications and refinance applications versus app based applications and AI based applications and financing services. One of the things that we saw that the Berkeley study pulled out that was incredible to see, because they reviewed over 7 million applications and mortgages, and 1.3 million credit worthy applicants that were Black and Latino were rejected. And the study showed that using the exact same data, the exact same financing, the exact same job, the exact same everything, except going through the app-based system and taking race out of the equation, 1.3 million of those loans were approved. So besides just dealing with, you know, normal pitfalls and normal issues that we see with the situation, you're also dealing with a person to person element to this. You know, there are several realtors who have, you know, through the power of advertising and power of marketing, have made themselves kind of the, you know, the larger names that people will go to, and people have kind of a bias against shopping around when it comes to, you know, getting something as big as a home. And if you spread out, you know, your search a little bit more and include a little bit of, you know, whether it be face to face and app based, you'll see, you can actually see that there's a major difference. One of the things that also comes out of the study, you know, and obviously goes without saying based on the results that I gave a little bit earlier, that, you know, some of these app based approvals were 40% less likely to be rejected than face to face loan applications for Latinos and for Blacks. So, you know, there's definitely something that could be done there on the policy wide, on the policy side of things, of maybe using AI in conjunction with, you know, an actual loan specialist to kind of, you know, kind of foolproof the system as far as how things are being checked out. That might be a way for them to go. I think definitely doing a study of face to face versus AI, and, you know, seeing what can be improved about the AI, because even the AI being that it's more accurate and better for minorities to be able to get these loans through these systems, there's still a bit of an implicit bias there because their data is built off of old mortgages. It's built off of data that has come before it to build up their algorithms. And if that algorithm, if those old mortgages were implicitly biased to begin with, then there is going to be at least a bit of a bias in that system as well, just not nearly as much as we see face to face. So that might be kind of a frontier policy wise, is using the AI to kind of proof and kind of, you know, to kind of be a fail safe to go in conjunction with face to face loan applications to actually get somewhere and kind of keep it all honest, if you will.
Yes, sir. And then one thing that I felt I was kind of diving into, there is a first time homeowner uh, programs and things of that nature through the government. I believe that, you know, the government can kind of build a program, especially when you're talking about uh, minorities, Latinos, or African Americans, who are first time homeowners, because when you look along the lines within the minority community, you have people who are within their, you know, I mean, late 30s, early 40s, who would never have even the, you know, the dream that they could actually truly own a home and things of that nature. And that's sad to already have that mentality ingrained within the community. So I believe there has to be kind of a bridge, even kind of to go hand to hand with policy, to be able to help first time homeowners within minority communities be able to kind of bridge away into already having homes that are, you know, maybe set aside within, you know, opportunity zones and opportunity communities. I know, what was it, the last administration with the opportunity zones, I believe they kind of had a good framework with what they were trying to do in the bigger sense, but I believe that can be tweaked a bit within Congress to be able to offer a better, you know, environmental growth for a lot of minorities, so that we can all uh, continue our fight towards equality, uh, you know, on a fair playing field, if you would say. As I said, I think housing is one of the most vital and keys to actually seeing equality. I mean, you know, depending on what school you go to, uh, you know, that your level of education, um, what type of competitive sports, you know, you're allowed to be in as a kid and things of that nature, that may determine, you know, what scouts see you. You'll see a kid because their family has a little bit more money and they have a little bit more opportunity. They're able to put them at a better school, and maybe something that is their passion as a youth is 9 times out of 10, they have a better opportunity going forward, looking at a career field and things of that nature, all the way from the high school and middle school levels. They're geared more towards finding a career and path field, and all that is built off of environment and things of that nature. So this is one of the most vital and key things that we need, especially when we're talking about bringing up the next generation of minorities in America.
Absolutely. I would say when you're looking at different policies that can be put in place that are going to help minority communities get ahead in a system like this, not just in the data and the research and and the accountability, but I think looking at first time ownership programs, rent to own type programs, land contract programs, opportunity zone programs, and being able to find out, well, just looking around the country and at the type of communities that you're, looking at where, some of these things may work best. One type of program may work better in one area where a different one may work better somewhere else. But it is all about being able to breed a similar, consistent level of equal opportunity, which is what equality is all about. So that's definitely something that should be looked at. And I know a lot of people kind of balk at government oversight when it comes to these things because again, there's kind of a friction between oversight and free market. And though there's nothing wrong with capitalism, if there's something that we should have learned in the last 30 years, is that capitalism without oversight can get a little off the rails at times. And when it comes to the predatory nature that some people take when it comes to the loan system and getting people into debt and things like that, there should be a certain level of oversight to make sure, if nothing else, that things stay on the up and up, and that people in a situation where they're not nearly as financially stable or have the education in how the credit system works, that they're able to learn about the system and become a part of the system without the system taking advantage of them for someone else's profit. And we definitely need some sort of oversight for that. We've seen example after example of how that sort of predatory mentality can help make someone rich, but it also does so at the expense, more often than not, of minority communities, and we can definitely do better than that. So that's kind of the overall view I think that the administration should take towards attacking this problem.
And I mean, as I said, especially with the new committee that's been formed to look at certain issues and things affecting minority communities at large. Um, we're just putting, certain things on the table that we feel, as an organization, need to be looked at and maybe kind of, as you said, with the AI, if there's scientific, I think AI is as close you can get to scientific evidence that there is an issue in this field, that this is something that we truly need to be looking at that level. Kind of rolling into our second topic today. Um, I kind of wanted you to open us up and basically speak on the. We're not talking about. We spent all last year speaking on the need for minority voting, voting at the local level, and needing to know your local representation and things of that nature. And what's one thing I know you prior to you were telling me, you kind of came to a revelation, as far as us as Americans in general at looking at our representation at the local level.
Yeah, absolutely. To set this up, and I've spoken on this, many times. We've had, quite a few meetings that I've spoken on understanding how powerful local elections are. And it's very easy for people to be seduced by the headlines that we see in the media of all of the bigger names that we know. I mean, most people know who their senators are, and a lot of people, everybody knows who's running for president. Everybody knows a representative in the House here or there. But on the ground level, understanding, your local government, what their agendas are, where they come from, what they stand for, what are they voting for, and how it directly affects you and your family is so much more important today than it's ever been before. This revelation kind of came to me. I was actually watching a series on Netflix, and it was about child abuse, and it was about the sheer number of people who came into contact with a specific case and nothing was done. And there were companies that were put in place to kind of oversee that system, and that nothing was done on on the local level because there's a very powerful local government in place who took a no bid contract, allowed a company to kind of take over that system, and to keep their bottom line. They undercut how many people were working, they undercut the amount of resources they had, they undercut the levels that you could go to and the links that you could go to, just to prevent lawsuits down the road, or a potential lawsuit here or there. You had social workers who had 230 families on their caseload. So I don't know how many families you can watch at one time, but I don't think the number is 230. So when I look at that and then I juxtapose it against some of the things that I'm seeing in other places across the country, when we look at the power outage that we had here in Texas 2 weeks ago, and we look at failures of government in other places, it's easy to get lost in the headlines, and it's easy to get lost in, kind of the day-to-day rhetoric and politics of things. But we need to seriously look at how these systems get set up in the first place. It wasn't until I did a little bit of digging and research to realize that it was local governments that kind of set up a system in place where, we would, not even be on a national power grid, that we would be on our own kind of power grid, and the accountability of that being farmed out to a third party company who is accountable to almost no one. And that the people who voted on a system like that actually got most of, if not all of their major donations from energy companies before they end up becoming the only state with deregulated energy. you know and there's so many examples across the country of these type of issues, and it made me think, do we even know who our people are? I mean, how many people can actually name a city councilman where they live? How many people know the internal structure of the areas that they live? I saw that LA County, which is the largest county in the country, over 20 million people living in a single county, and all of the budget for that county runs through 7 people. And it's 7 people that you wouldn't know if they were sitting next to you with their own name tag on. And those people are not held to account to the type of issues that those people see in that community. You have such a major minority population in a place like Los Angeles County, and even outside of the minority community. For anyone in that area, being able to hold someone to account for the things that are supposed to be happening in a community is huge. And those people have a voting cycle the same as everybody else. But it struck me really heavily that I know John Cornyn. I know who that is. I know who Ted Cruz is. I know who Greg Abbott is. I know who the mayor of Austin is. I don't know anything about the city council. I don't know anything about the board of supervisors. I don't know who the county federal, who the county judge is. I don't know any of that stuff. But every 4 to 6 years, those people come up on ballots. And what's happening at home in your community is in the hands directly of those people, where funds are going to go, what programs are going to be instituted, how will these things be how will the oversight work on these things? All of this stuff matters. And whenever there's an incident, there's always an outrage, and there's always, there are town halls, and there are marches in the streets, and there are protests and things like that. But just for using the Texas Power situation alone, that happened in February of 2021. Some of the people involved in the decision making here are not up for election until November of 2022. And it's 80 degrees today. The power's on today. The grocery stores are restocked today. The water's on today. So between now and then, how many people are going to forget about it? How many people who are affected deeply by this are going to register to vote, and are going to set themselves up to say, you know what, this isn't happening to me again. This isn't happening to my family again. I need some people in here who are going to do some better policies. I need some people in here who are prepared to get us back on the national grid. We need some people in here who are going to do better than this. you know that that sort of thing is playing itself out over and over and over again across the country. As we talked about before, there are 40 states right now who are looking at and attempting to put in policies that are going to restrict voting in 2022 and 2024. The only reason that we had a change of administration, the only reason we had a change in the Senate is because of minority voting. And it is going to be minority voting that is directly affected in this situation. And it is not going to be the high named, high powered senator who gets into an argument on a Sunday morning news show. It's not that guy. It's your state legislature. It's your state house. It's your state senate. It's your city controllers. It's the people who are deciding what funding goes to what polling place. It's the people who decide what's going, who's going to be able to man these areas. Those are the people who are in charge of this, and we don't even know who they are, much less what their policy agenda is, and when they're even coming up for vote themselves. And we got to this is an opportunity for us, and the reason I wanted to pick this as a topic is that this is an opportunity for us to take a step back and say, wait a minute, we need to stop being seduced by the giant names and the giant headlines, and we need to look at the much more powerful unseen names that are going on underneath here, who are going to have the biggest impact on our community, so that we can properly hold these people accountable, because they stand as much, if not more so, between us and the things that we need as a minority community as any other name that you can think of, and that is up to and including president.
Yes, sir. And I mean, this is one of the things, especially as you said, for minorities who feel like, within their community, there's an issue that needs to be resolved, and they're not seeing, as you said, with the energy issues that are going on in Texas, or that have just been, brought to light, that have been probably festering for years. Um, when you have people who are part of these local governments, but they have the whole buddy shake hand behind closed doors policy, where they're giving somebody a contract because they're, kin, or that's their buddy, along the way, or they know somebody who knows them, and things of that nature. So as you said, a lot of lobbying going on, especially there, that we're being able to see in the national spotlight in Texas. So I think people within these communities locally, even further than minority communities, need to actually take a look at their representation that has caused the years of getting to this point, uh, to allowing for their local um, area to not be on the same power grid as everybody else. I mean, you got to have people fighting for you as your representation, that are going to make sure that these things are taken care of, and that's the reason why we elect representation to go fight for these certain policies, and to make sure that we can live our normal lives, and that these things are already taken care of. We don't have to wait for a storm to come through, and then everybody ends up without power, and then now we know. So these are certain things that, as an organization, I said, we want to look at things that we can affect, and put a spotlight on things that we think need to be looked at policy wise, and can be changed to make a better opportunity, not just for minorities, but Americans in general and total, and create equality across the board for all of us. Closing out today, uh, how do you feel, Mark, in the sense of, we've had the Get Out and Vote initiative. You got LeBron with his vote for change and things of that nature. Uh, how do you feel like, as minorities, would you say that we could really put an emphasis on the weight that that local vote truly carries uh, going forward?
Well, I think, I would appeal to anybody who has given their time and their energy and their effort to volunteer for larger elections, to offer some of that energy and some of that time to the local stuff. I would implore for everybody who participates in larger elections but doesn't participate in smaller ones. I would like for you to think about it like this: Do you, or would you trust the care of your child to a total stranger? Would you entrust a total stranger to the PIN number of your ATM card? Would you trust a total stranger to pick your groceries for you? If the answer is no, then you should get to know your local government, because that's currently what's going on. That's currently where we stand, because these people are, they're in the shadows, but they control so much of what's going on, and they answer to almost no one. And there a lot of them are really monolithic structures. I mean, even in my own city, we have a city government of city council of 11 people. It's 10 Democrat, one Republican. I didn't even know that until today. you know, so it's something where we can't leave these things up to chance, because we've seen so many times with these different disasters that have come up in different situations that not everybody in government is on our side. Actually, very few are. And there are fewer still who want to see us have the type of success that'll give us the type of enjoyment and privilege out of life that they currently enjoy. So if we want to be able to get to any of those things, we're going to have to be able to do it on our own, and we're fine doing that. The one thing about minorities is they're not afraid of work, but we need to have the opportunity, and we need to not have roadblocks in our way. And there are people that are dedicated to doing it, and there are people who have a financial interest in doing that. And right now, more than ever, it's important for anybody, from stars and celebrities on down to the local level, on down to just doing a 5 minutes worth of research to see who it is in your community that's having that pulls these levers and pulls these strings. So we know who to hold to account. So we know what we have in front of us and who we're voting for. Um, you know, and the last thing that I would say is that we need to continue talking about these things. We saw the power of our vote in the last two election cycles, as a lot of things flipped because we weren't happy with the way things were going. We wanted better. We didn't just talk about it. We acted it out and went to the ballot box, and things flipped that people didn't think would flip ever, and they did. And so we've seen the power of the minority vote. We need to recognize that power is something that it scares the establishment, and they would do anything to keep us from continuing to do it, because our equality, they feel that it's going to come at their expense. And if they feel that way, they're going to be desperate about holding on to the status quo and holding on to the system that they have. People are going to be desperate to hold on to the money that they have and the palms that have been getting greased for years. So we want to break that system so that we can have a better life for ourselves. We can have the safety and security of retirement, and we can have a future for our children. We have to be prepared to do the basic research, to do the basic thing of staying engaged more so than anything else, and continue talking. I know we had a little bit of a debate with a few people on the Facebook group page today, and I love that we had that debate, because not everybody's going to agree. And sometimes it's just a little bit of a diverse opinion between one thing and another, but we need to continue to stay engaged and continue to talk. And as we always talk about with these meetings, you know, please continue to, jump in and have your opinion. Say what you have to say, even when you don't agree. No, we're not just going to, shoot you down when you don't agree with something. We want to hear your take. We're going to hear something that we haven't heard before. You're going to hear something that you haven't heard before. And being engaged like that is what's going to help us continue to push these things forward and make life better. Togetherness is that key to a better tomorrow. So in order for us to get there, we got to continue to speak together so that we can work together and act together so that we can move together.
Yes, sir. And then closing out today on my end, when you're talking about the local level and how important this is to all of us, to make sure we know who our actual representation is and be more of a part of our local government who's making the initial policies that affect us a lot closer than you see in these national positions. We always talk about, I know last year I mentioned at a ton about the trickle down effect within government. We got to look at, as a minority community, when we're looking at our representation, we got to look at a trickle up effect. we got to look at if we can change a group of representation at this local level and gain a little bit more representation that reflects the minority population in that area, then you can start to make changes at a bigger level. But it's hard to take a bigger bite off the plate than taking a little bite and be able to consume the whole issue as a whole. And that's what we're looking at right now with our government. This is something that's took years to put together the system the way it is now, and it's going to take years to dissolve it and resolve it into a government that works for all people across the board. So when we're looking at that, in a sense, we gotta come at the local level and get out and, as you said, maybe get to know at least one person in your district who represents you, and learn, a little bit of their backing and what they stand for, and policies that they fight for on your end that affect you going forward. And when you're looking at 2022 and 2024, as you said, there are certain states right now that are positioning policy and law that is going to make it more difficult than it was already this time around for a lot of people to actually get out and vote, instead of easier, which is what we're as an organization push for, especially with the law that has already been in Congress floating for a good few years now, the voting, um, to make it where you should be able to walk into any voting booth, and if you have a government issued ID, you should be able to vote. And that's what it is at the end of the day for all Americans. Um, we've got to make it a lot easier to vote and not harder to vote. And that's something we're seeing, as you said, was it 40 plus states now working on policy that are going to create it, a harder environment to vote, especially for minorities, more so than anything. So these are things that we got to look at a lot more deeply, and people have honestly got to, keep their attention on these certain policies and things that we can affect going forward, all across the board, whether it's housing or the voting that we did discuss today.
Absolutely. This is so important for us to remember that, suppression is oppression. And no one who likes the direction that voting is going has ever put in a law to try and restrict it. So understanding just the basics of that, and going forward, is that we need to understand that there's some of these people are not on our side. We need to know who they are. We need to know what they're doing. We need to be able to hold them accountable. And then, just like how I, say every one of these calls that we need to take care of each other, this is a part of that. Because what happens on these local levels affects all of us in such a huge way that gets lost in the headlines and the distraction of national media attention. We can't trust that either. We have to be able to do our research, pay attention, know what's right and wrong, be able to vote your conscience, and be able to hold to account what we really need for what we're really asking for. We talk about all the time about being able to pick your fight. What is it that you are personally fighting for as a minority? And minority is not just labeled to Black and Latino. It's for anybody who's marginalized. What is it that you're fighting for? What is it that you need? And what is it that you are looking for? And I guarantee you, whatever it is that changes it happens on the local level first. So that's something that we want to look at going forward. So, for everybody, say the same thing every week. Everybody have a great week. Stay engaged. Take care of one another, and let's get after knowing who these local people are and what's going on.